sometimes the academic work, um, the motivation behind someone having to enjoy it or not, it's not like it is difficult to such an extent, but sometimes it's the way it is presented because you can find people falling in love with certain subjects and they tend to do good in the subjects because sometimes they can relate. In most cases, a subject like physics, which is what I want to talk about today, we have less students who seem to like physics as a subject, but also because the subject is not relatable in most cases. Although, if you read deeply inside to the subject itself, you'll find that there is some interesting stuff about it, but the way the subject is presented in an academic manner of which everyone ends up doing this academic thing because your parents put you into it because like really no one really chooses to be at school. The whole concept of school is you just wake up one day, you are at school when you start to realize what life is about and they teach you that you're doing this because of this. I feel like even if your parents were to choose not to take you to school, the community would judge your parents for not taking you to school because we have to do these things in a sense of our academic excellence at times it may be towards the motivation of I want to make my parents proud because they're paying for my fees or because to get a better future, but it is rare for a child to can see the future at the younger developing stage. Hence I say I admire teachers who teaches languages at a foundation phase because they have a way to can make us understand the language. Although I don't know if it's the approach for everyone, but then mostly for children who grew up in the wood, we know that English is taught in our vernacular language, such that every word would be interpreted to your vernac to know exactly what the word mean. So that was the direct way of approaching it. But then, unfortunately, with physics, we don't have a lot of people who feel like they understand the knowledge enough to can try to interpret it to the child's level of understanding. Because in most cases, we end up becoming teachers for wrong reasons. I wanted to be an engineer, but then my marks were not good enough. And then I'm going to register for education and then I end up becoming a teacher, something like that. It is rare where we find motivated teachers who was like, yeah, man, I feel like I was born for this. Because at the end of the day, ah man, the payment is not that good on the teaching side. Everyone looks at it like that. And we live in a country where we all want to get the ching chings to be at the right level so you can afford stuff, right? So now, a subject like physics, it is not friendly at all based on how probably the questions are being approached. I feel like students need to connect with a subject in order to love a subject. And I'm going to give you a brief story. Personally, I was not familiar with a subject called economics. Like economics as a subject, there was a point where I had no clue of the knowledge of economics. Actually, my first time getting to be involved in a subject, or rather getting to do a subject under economics as a module, it was when I was at the university institution. And the time I approached the subject, I felt like I've missed out on life on that approach of knowledge that I didn't really view in my life because like I felt like the subject was so interesting enough because they tell you how economics is actually science, like it falls under the scientific methods. However, you are now studying the science of human behavior and stuff, of which if you are observant when you walk in the street, how people shop, how they react to things, generally, if you get to have that conversation with yourself, you already ask yourself some of the questions that the subject could be about. So, with that being said, I feel like economics, it is one of those subjects which is presented very well, such that in most cases, students tend to do good because the concept itself makes sense. Back to what I was saying, unlike physics, with physics, it's like you are expected to know this thing, which is acceleration. You are expected to know this thing, which is velocity. Well, with the concept of time, because time is the most used variable in physics as well. With the concept of time, I feel like people understand what time is and they know not to waste time for this. You know that an episode of a series can play from this time to this time. But however, when we have to put the application in calculations, the way the concept of physics is brought to us, it makes the whole thing to look so academic, such that you even forget the whole concept of time that you may know in your own understanding because of the way they impose the question to us. Let me give you an example. Let's look at this question, right? Whoever who created the question, they wanted to investigate something. You had to, at some point there, you have to calculate the resultant force. Now, I understand that is the academic approach, but reading at the storyline, so the question reads, a motorbike produces a driving force of 500 newtons as the bike and the rider move eastwards on a flat, straight road. When the rider applies the brakes, a frictional force of 150 newtons acts on the wheels, slows down the motorbike and the rider. Now, when you look at this, you have to do some calculations of some sort, but then so what? It's just the driver at this force doing this. Like, it doesn't get you to wanna feel like you are involved in this whole scenario thing, such that the question is so boring. You feel like, ah man, what am I gonna do with these things in life? Just like the same questions that students ask themselves, like, where will I use calculus? So it's hinting, it's giving those vibes of which there could have been an opportunity to can source out the question for someone to relate. But I'm saying this, unfortunately, we have different views of things. And the final paper, it is written by the same races. Like it's one paper for all the races, such that we don't relate to these things in the same way. Because look at this question, man. Look at this one. A taxi is traveling at a speed of 25 meters per second. When a traffic light 40 meters ahead changes to red. So whatever the story that's going to happen, the questions will come after, right? But imagine if you were to impose this question to like students like me who can relate, who are black from the hood. Do you know how much you can make people want to be connected to that question using any phrase of any view rather of a taxi story that you may have, because there's a lot of stories that happens inside the taxi, and as black people we are more familiar and exposed to the taxi driving industry and the whole things that happens inside the taxi, and we know the behavior of taxi drivers, and we know taxi drivers and robots, what happens, all the story. You could have put that story into the question to make the question to connect the student to feel like they want to calculate that. But unfortunately, it is how it's presented. However, I must give credit to those lecturers or teachers or whoever who get to be in a position of setting up an exam, because there are some who at least try. I saw this question and it was so interesting. Um, this one. So here, a man who has a mass of 80 kg is running away from a pit bull at a velocity of 5 meters per second and wants to jump over the garden wall that is 2 meters high. This, you can try to feel sorry for the man, because now you want to know, like, this guy is in danger. You see, now it's putting you in, you are kind of like involved in the situation of wanting to know what happens next. And then even the asking of the question, they were so wise to say you have to use kinetic and potential energy to calculate whether the man would be able to jump over the 2 meters wall. Round your answer off to 2 decimal places. Like, the whole story now, there's like some adventure to discover as to, is this man gonna jump off the wall or not? And then that's when we do the hard part and start to explain what is kinetic energy, how does it work? And then now you are at a state where you are interested in wanting to solve this mystery to know if is this going to be done or not. But whether you are learning it on the first side or not, you already feel like there are some mysteries to uncover in this subject, and then you want to know more and more of it. Meaning, or hopefully, in that case, the calculations could make sense. It's just an idea that I'm thinking based on the subject of physics. But otherwise, that's all I can say for now. Join me on the next video as we give the actual answers to some of the questions that I've highlighted here. I will do them one video at a time. I'm Mr. Maimane. This is Simplified RSA. We are the guys who makes it looks easy. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all our social media platforms, and also feel free to inquire about our private lessons. We offer private lessons at a very reasonable fee. You can send us a WhatsApp or an email from any of these contacts.